Hi, welcome to the Trauma Thrivers podcast. Delighted to have you with us. I'm Lula Bentz, your host, a psychotherapist, a trauma expert, and a survivor myself. Lovely to have you with us. The Trauma Thrivers podcast is for anybody who has been through any sort of developmental trauma or who has complex PTSD. This podcast aims to help educate, inspire, and support those of us that are on a trauma healing journey. We've got stories, steps, and various solutions to trauma to help you heal. If you'd like more information or tips or tools or strategies, please go to traumathrivers.com. You can also find this podcast on my YouTube channel, Lula Bentz Trauma Thrivers. If you'd like to join our community of thrivers, please find us on Facebook under Trauma Thrivers. Chiron Clinics proudly sponsors the Trauma Thrivers podcast. Chiron Clinics offer residential and outpatient treatment for anyone trying to recover from the effects of trauma. Chiron's clinics look through the lens of trauma to treat common mental health problems and behavioural disorders, which can lead to self-harming, addictions, depression, anxiety and relationship issues. All treatment protocols used at Chiron Clinics use the latest research on trauma in the brain as a guide, and the combination can be highly effective in restoring nervous system regulation. For more information, see chironclinics.com. Hey Trauma Thrivers, welcome back. Today I'm delighted to introduce you to a friend of mine, Lis Cashin. I can't wait for you to hear Liz's incredible story. Liz is an award-winning author, TEDx and global speaker. She's a consultant, facilitator and coach, and Liz is on a mission to challenge the stigma around mental health and to normalize the conversation and get mental health and well-being on the agenda in organizations and schools. She works with individuals and teams to enable them to unlock their full potential and transform their mental well-being. So Liz very kindly offered to tell us her phenomenal story today in our Trauma Thrivers podcast. So thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Now, I'm very lucky or consider myself lucky in that I've already heard your story and watched your TEDx and been inspired by you for a long time, which is one of the reasons I really wanted you to do the Trauma Thrivers podcast, because I know that your story, although harrowing, is so hugely inspiring too. And I would love you to share it, or share about how you got to the diagnosis of PTSD, which I know you didn't realize, did you, for a very long time?
No, it was over 30 years. It was only, in fact, just about 3 years ago
that you found out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. From when I was 13.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
As I say, I was 13, and I, like any teenager who goes to school, had a school sports day. And I was actually really excited because I'd been selected to throw the javelin, and I thought I had a really good chance of getting a medal, which at that time meant a lot to me because I had some background trauma at home.
Did you? You'd already had trauma previous to 13.
Exactly. My stepdad drank far too much, and with his increase in alcohol came his increase in temper and emotional mental abuse. So my self-esteem was already low. Yeah. But I really thrived on the positive praise I got from sports. And I'd been throwing the javelin for the school javelin team in the months leading up to the sports day. So I went off to school really excited, actually. I thought, this was a real chance to shine. So I was really looking forward to it. And we went off to lessons as usual. And then in the afternoon, I took part in a couple of other events, didn't get a medal, and then made my way across to the javelin event. Now, the school had put a history teacher and an English teacher in charge of the javelin event. So you can already start to sense that perhaps things weren't as they should have been that day.
No.
I took my seat and waited. There's about 5 other girls. I was in an all-girls school. Waited for my turn to throw. And the school had put 2 of my 13-year-old classmates on the field, out on the field, to measure the javelin throws. So when my turn came, I picked up the javelin. You know, I took a deep breath, and I was really willing to win the medal, you know, as you do when you're taking part in these things. I was almost desperate to get that praise. So I took my run up. It was considered a throw because it was I was within the box. I threw the javelin as hard as I could. And at first it was going straight. And I thought, oh, this is really good. And then at the very last moment, it veered off very sharply to the right where my classmate and friend Sammy was standing right next to the white line in the javelin throw area. And for some reason, she was distracted and she wasn't looking. So she didn't see it coming. And there was a few of us, we screamed her name. So she turned, and I had a brief moment of thinking, oh gosh, that was close. I don't know if you've ever had that when you just almost hit something in the car maybe or something like that. And then that turned to horror as the javelin struck her in the head.
Oh, I know I've heard it before, but every time I hear it my heart goes out to all of you. It's just so horrendous. I can't imagine, Liz, really.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Lou. It was like, you know, especially it was so at odds with how I'd been feeling, the excitement. And then suddenly it was literally like a horror film.
Yeah.
And I know some of your people watching this will understand shock, but the shock was just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
That I just collapsed onto my knees. I remember I had my head in my hands and I was just saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You know, I just couldn't take it in. It was just too much.
No, I don't think anybody could take it in. I mean, just horrendous. I mean, it makes me want to cry now listening to it, you know. And
of course, everybody ran over to my friend to make sure it was a very traumatic scene.
Yeah.
I don't remember the next bit, apart from my overriding feeling of wanting to get her help. This was pre-mobile phones, so we couldn't just ring, and we were quite away from the school. So somebody would have to run and get an ambulance. And I just remember thinking that I had to do that, must get an ambulance. But apparently, and I only found this out a few years ago, apparently I was just running around in circles on the field in shock.
Yeah,
you know, just running round and round and round.
Yeah, understandably.
And then someone realised, you know, maybe I needed some support, and I was taken inside, and then I went home. And my mum came, and I just really wanted to see Sammy. You know, we went up to the hospital, and then we were told she'd been transferred. I thought I'd blinded her. And we were told she'd been transferred to a special neurological hospital. And this feeling that I'd had, that it was absolutely terrible what had happened, was confirmed, really. I knew then it was very serious. And my mum went off to find a doctor, and I was left on my own. And I just remember looking at the seconds and the minutes in the hospital waiting room, just desperate for mum to come back. We went outside, and it was like a white plastic chair. And I think I knew the answer before I asked. You know, you have this intuition.
Yes.
I just said, Mum, is she going to die? And Mum said, yes, I think so. 4 days later, she died.
Oh.
Yeah. It was like my whole world was ripped apart. It was in the news, it was on the national news, it was on the radio. You know, it was like the police asked me if I'd had an argument with her that morning. And I thought, oh my God, they think I've done it on purpose. You know, the guilt I felt.
Yeah, already was enough. What a stupid thing to ask.
So all of these things. And then afterwards, I got no help at all. So unbelievably, by today's standards.
Yes.
I didn't talk to anybody about it. So I was left with me.
Crazy.
Yeah. I was just left with my own.
Were we really that untrauma informed 30 years ago.
Completely. My GP said it didn't even need to go on my medical record. That's what he said to my mum.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I was asked if I wanted to see a psychiatrist, but I was 13. And at that point, I thought, oh my gosh, they think I'm mad. You know, that's what a 13-year-old thinks. And I actually thought I would never get a job. That's what I thought. I thought, if I see a psychiatrist, it will be a black mark. So I'd better try and pretend I'm okay. It was the downfall of me, really.
Yes.
From that point on, I kept thinking I had to try and pretend. I was deeply traumatized. You know, I felt like I was a zombie. I felt like, I think if you believe in such things, it almost felt like my soul had left my body and I was just this shell walking around. And was like that, you know, for decades, really, just not feeling a connection to anything. I felt like I was in a glass box and everyone else was on the outside and I couldn't quite get through. And I felt numb at times, or I'd go into deep fear at other times, or anger. I had such deep rage inside that would get triggered, you know, but I didn't understand
all the symptoms of PTSD.
Yeah, and the flashbacks. That ultimately I lost the visual flashbacks, but they became feeling flashbacks.
Yes.
You know, I'd have a trigger and I'd feel it. And that was until just a few years ago, you know, I was living with that. So I just had to live with it, because I didn't understand anything different. And no one else, you know, I was diagnosed on and off with depression over the years. But it wasn't depression, it was PTSD.
Yeah, totally. And then did you go into other ways, as we do, to manage the trauma? You know, the drinking or the drugging or the you know, one night stands, or all of that kind of self-loathing almost, and you know, unprocessed, you know, guilt and shame.
I think I've ticked them all, to be honest, over the years. I think because of my stepdad, I couldn't rebel too much because it was an unsafe environment. So I used food. As a way to beat myself up. And of course, that's a pretty constant way to do it. So that was the first part. And then when I left home and went off to university, which I'm incredibly proud of myself, and I'd also left home at 17, lived in a council flat to get away from my stepdad. So doubly proud of myself.
That shows tremendous blooming courage. And
God.
And then
but you know, then I was, you know, I slept around. I realize now it was the only sort of connection I'd felt, you know, although it's fleeting, and it almost became addictive. And then there was shame around that, and guilt around that. And then one day a friend offered me ecstasy, and, you know, I took ecstasy, and for the first time there was this no pain, there was this relief, and in fact there was connection, you know, that was artificial, and a sense of belonging. I became part of this exciting rave culture that was emerging.
It was just around our 20s.
It was. You know, I was popular, I was on guest lists to get into clubs. You know, I could go into a club on my own, no problem, because I knew I was going to take drugs, and then suddenly I'd have all this confidence, and you know, I lost weight, I was very attractive, you know, and so, you know, lots of guys were attracted to me. And that became really mentally addictive, because what was my choice? Well, if I stopped that, I was going back to that hell that I was living in before, and I couldn't drink alcohol. It made me really sick. So interesting, because I was brought up by someone who drank too much, that then I couldn't drink alcohol. It's almost like I was intolerant to it. So I didn't want to stop taking the drugs. And then it became this double life. You know, when I left uni, went to work, I'd put on the professional suit in the week, and then at the weekends I'd literally, from Friday to Sunday, wouldn't sleep. I'd just be taking drugs the whole time, party after party after party, and then somehow managed to get through the week before the next weekend. That was how I lived. And so
how long did you live like that for, until you started to, I don't know, see the light?
It was about 6 years full on, and everything was escalating. I was needing to take more drugs. I was in very abusive relationships. You know, I was punishing myself on so many levels. And then I had this sort of breakthrough moment in my late 20s on a Dale Carnegie sales training course.
Oh, wow. Did you?
So it was totally unexpected. And basically, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People as a part of this course. And it said, think and act positively, and you will become positive.
Okay.
people talk about a light bulb moment, but I was like, what, you mean there's a choice here?
Yeah.
Because I'd been asking really big questions before that about why was I born? What is the purpose of all this? Was I born just to create so much misery? If there was a God, I was raging at them. Why me? Why Sammy? Why us? All of this was, I was really asking those questions. And then suddenly there was like this hope. There was this like, God, I've got choice here. Yeah. Wow. So no longer was I a victim, just having to put up with all of this. Actually, I could start to create my own experience. That was transformative. And I know, looking back, considering the trauma I was carrying, that was a very simplistic and naive thing to think that I could just switch my thinking at that point. But it was the start of the journey.
Yes, exactly.
It was the start of the journey. Yeah.
And
then I went off traveling. Had this incredible sort of spiritual awakening in India that I wasn't expecting. I knew nothing about. Someone gave me Reiki, which is a form of spiritual healing. I had this sort of massive spiritual awakening, felt connected to something much greater than me. It was the most profound experience. And that set me off on a whole holistic alternative healing journey.
Yes.
Which was amazing. And every single part of that, I trained in shamanism, life coaching, NLP, hypnotherapy, theta healing, bioenergetic healing, it was, you name it. My dad said I could plaster the house with certificates, and I think I could. But it was almost like my new addiction. I'd get a fix every time I was on these courses. I'd suddenly feel that, oh, this is amazing. And then the come down afterwards, like with the drugs. So I'd have to do the next thing and the next thing. And then I found myself on a 3 weeks in silence, meditation retreat in Sri Lanka. And just at the start, the guy said to me, you really need to learn to be kinder to yourself. And I argued. I was like, I am being kind to myself. I'm here, aren't I? I've been doing all this stuff. And as I was saying it, it was like, dunk, the penny dropped. I thought, I've just been pushing, all the time, not giving myself any chance to integrate or catch up or anything. And I was being very unkind in my mind to myself. So that was another big turning point. And I realized I'd suffered enough. I'd been punishing myself enough.
Yeah. And we have to stop the punishing on our trauma journey, healing journeys, don't we? We have to stop that punishing part, either over pushing or overdoing it or over egging, even our healing journeys.
It's so true. And I actually, when I was 3 weeks in silence on my own in this center, I was doing a self retreat, and it was almost like I went through all the layers, the anger, the rage, the sadness, the trauma, the grief. I was like dropping through these layers. And when I got to the bottom, I feel emotional now thinking about it, but I realized just how much I hated myself. I really hated myself. I'd rejected myself. And I realized that, okay, that trauma happened and that was that. But I was the one who had been punishing myself every day since. I was the one who believed I was evil, that I deserved to be punished. I was the one who'd done that to myself.
Yes.
And it was like my heart cracked open and compassion was born for myself. That, that was really the start of learning to accept and have love and compassion for myself. I was just an innocent, child that day on that school field, and I'd been thinking that all this time I was waiting to discover that I was really evil and everyone was going to discover it, and I'd been living with that for a long time.
So when did you get the PTSD diagnosis? Did you get a diagnosis?
I did, so about 4 or 5 years ago, I started to speak about my story.
Yes.
I felt like I'd learned so much that I wanted to share with others. But what I found was every time I stood up and shared, I was being re-traumatized.
Okay.
I didn't realize initially. I just was coming away and it was, I was disoriented and feeling, that trauma trigger. And it was taking me a while to recover. And I thought, this can't be right. In me wanting to help other people, it's not right to keep hurting myself.
No.
That can't be it.
No.
And then someone gave me the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, Bessel van der Kolk,
yeah.
The seminal book on trauma. Yeah,
I read the first chapter about a soldier with PTSD, and I could have written it myself. I thought, oh, this is exactly what I've been feeling all this time. It
Yes.
was such a relief. Actually, I cried, it was
Oh,
sort of affirming.
yes.
And so I went to my GP and I asked him, could I get an assessment? And he was amazing. He said, I am so sorry on behalf of the medical profession that nobody has thought to send you for an assessment before now. And I thought, even though he hadn't been a part of that, I
Yes.
just thought it was a beautiful thing for him. So it was very healing for me, actually.
Yeah, lovely thing to say.
So I had the assessment and the diagnosis, and then I was referred for trauma CBT with a beautiful, very kind and caring therapist. And so we worked, obviously it was traumatic, so I had to relive it all, but from a compassionate lens.
Yes.
And at one point I just looked at her with tears in my eyes and I said, I really didn't do anything wrong. It was like a revelation.
Yeah, you
Said,
didn't.
you didn't. You really did. She said,
No.
you were a victim that day.
Yeah.
You had a right to be safe. And I was
Yeah.
like, I had a right to be safe at school. And then I thought, I did have how could this have happened to me? 30 years too late. I was getting angry with the school saying, how could they have let me go through this?
I know, exactly.
I mean, the inquest did find the school responsible. I didn't say that earlier on, but because I wasn't allowed at the inquest and the verdict was death by misadventure, I had always thought as a child that meant I had misadventured, not the school. And so I've been carrying all of that.
Yeah.
It's very sad really that all of, but anyway, it just is how it was. I've accepted it all. And actually I've learned so much through the journey. But knowing that actually I didn't do anything wrong that day, that I was just an innocent 13-year-old, and that actually, I'd had a right to be safe. That was like another level of healing. I've since had EMDR, which has also helped. I've done some body work. I practice mindfulness and have done for a long time, which has really supported me in my resilience. And then last year I published a book about my story and did my TED talk, which was like another level.
Have you got the book there, Liz?
I have. This is the second edition.
Okay, amazing.
This is my journey to mental well-being. It's got loads of mental health insights and tips, and it's also my story.
Amazing.
Threaded throughout. So I really wanted to just make it accessible so that everything I talk about in the programs that I do, people could just get the book and access that way too.
Yeah, great.
But it actually led me last year to going to visit Sammy's mum.
Oh, did it?
It did, yeah. And that was profound, actually. And I said to her that, it was so emotional still, but I said that I felt like on some level, I mean, she never blamed me back then. She was just so compassionate from the start. It was incredible. But I said I felt almost like on some level, I was waiting for her permission for me to be happy.
Yes.
She got upset and said, I've only ever wanted you to be happy. It was almost like the missing piece for me. What an incredible woman and family, the whole family.
Yeah.
I dread to think what it would have been like if they'd have been different, but they were, and I had her blessing for the book and all of that.
Good.
So it's been quite a journey.
Oh my God, hasn't it just? And I would say to you, what an incredible woman and an incredible story. And now what next for you?
So the book, the second edition is coming, and then I'm developing a program.
Great.
That people can work through, an online program.
Lovely. If I can help support in any way, of course, I would love to.
Thank you so much. And I'm working a lot with organisations, helping them to build cultures where everyone thrives. So, mental health awareness, first aid for mental health, managing conversations around mental health. I like to work with young people as well. I think, to give a message of hope, to share my story. So,
and is that your main aim, Liz, do you think, to share hope and that, we can all overcome our tragedies and turn them into triumphs or go from, surviving or barely surviving? Sometimes we're kind of suffering, aren't we, at the beginning of our trauma journey?
We are.
To turn it into being able to thrive is really important.
Definitely. And that's my TED talk was called Mental Health Awakening, Suffering is Surmountable, because for a long time, there was no hope for me. And when there's no hope, it's hopeless. What's the point? You're stuck.
Yeah.
But all the things that I learned gave me hope, realizing I had choice, actually getting a spiritual sort of connection and meaning in my life, believing there's a bigger purpose to things. All of these things have helped me. All of the alternative ways that I've looked at healing, as well as the traditional and the medical.
Yes.
All of it, I think. So I look at things very holistically, and it is a journey. That I beat myself up for so long on a lot of these courses, thinking that I'd failed because I'd done the course and I wasn't healed.
Yes.
So it's like another way, like there's something wrong with you.
Yes.
Actually, when you've got trauma, it's a completely different ball game. You need trauma specific help. You need a guide to help you through. You're stuck in it, especially with PTSD. You're literally frozen.
Yes.
So all of those other things help to build my resilience and build my capacity. But they didn't help me to really resolve the trauma that I needed. Really specific professional trauma help.
Yep. I agree with you, and I hear you, and I'm excited that you're launching your own thing next year. And I really hope that whoever listened today got what I got out of your talk and your story. It's incredibly moving. I don't think I've cried on a podcast yet. This is the first. But actually so beautiful to hear how you turned it round, and how you continue to do that and help other people. So thank you for that, Liz, and thank you for your time today. And I'm excited what you bring into the world next year too.
Thank you so much, Lou, and much love to everyone who's listening. And remember, there is always hope. There is always hope.
Yeah. Thank you. To get hold of you, your website is www.
Lis Cashin. So it's Liz with an S, liscashin.com.
Okay.
And then there's only one Lis Cashin because it's an unusual name.
Yes, there is only one Lis Cashin, definitely.
Then I'm great, because on any social media you will find me, which is the great news.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, Lou, and you.
All right. Lots of love. Thanks so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope it helped you in some way, and I really hope to see you back here soon. If you have anything to share on today's experience or podcast, please nip over to the YouTube channel or the Facebook group Trauma Thrivers and let us know there.